So we're going to talk for a few minutes today about TalentDAO, and we're kind of focused on two things, unlocking talent and decentralizing knowledge. So we unlock talent by helping people in Web 2 onboard into this space. We're well connected with other DAOs. Many of us have been working in DAOs, and we're also creating like career pathing tools. We decentralize knowledge with our on-chain academic journal, the Journal of Decentralized Work. So, we're a DAO for DAOs focused on research, helping them essentially be able to have best practices that are backed by science and not just intuition. Next slide. Thank you. So I'm Renee.
I'm Lisa. Hi, everyone.
And yeah, let's get started. Next slide, please. Yeah, so basically, at the simplest sort of level, we're focused on providing the best insights so DAOs can live up to their potential. And we talk a lot about this in our manifesto, where DAOs are essentially the greatest human coordination experiment of our time. And there's a lot of promise, but most DAOs have a lot of work to do before they can really live up to that potential. And we're all very excited about governance tokens and NFT drops and like shooting the moon. But fundamentally, these are structureless businesses and they still need to have business fundamentals. So we're focused on helping DAOs essentially establish some evidence for what is and isn't working. Next slide, please. Cool. So, why did we do this? Why did we start TalentDAO? I full-heartedly believe that DAOs are the future of work. And there's sort of like 4 governing beliefs that we have at TalentDAO. So the first one is kind of my own personal thesis in that the Great Resignation is actually from corporate to crypto. So, we hear a lot about, culture or talent retention, blah, blah, blah. I think the real reason a lot of people have left corporate jobs is because they're seeking agency. And they're seeking non-traditional work arrangements, they want flexibility. And COVID, as horrible as it was, basically proved to the world that about 90% of jobs don't have to be done on site. The second kind of part of our thesis is that I think we need DAOs to fix traditional work. I talk about this in an article I wrote where I say kind of candidly, like, work today is designed to suck. And what I mean by that is like all these incentive structures essentially encourage top-down leadership, bureaucracy, closed-door politics, and it just makes it really not fun to do work, which is kind of unfortunate because you spend more time at work than you do with your loved ones. The third kind of point that I already mentioned is that this is the greatest human experiment of our time, and I wanted to be a part of that. So many of us at TalentDAO are organizational psychologists, researchers, business consultants, leadership consultants. And when we found out about this DAO structure a little over a year ago, it felt like a new sandbox to play in. And I was like, so many research studies popping through my head. And that kind of gets us to our last point in that we believe knowledge should be open source, right? So if any of you have sat in on some of the DeSci talks, that's kind of like our newfound sister industry. TalentDAO has sort of been a maverick working with DAOs, not really talking to DeSci. So we're super happy to join them. If you know anything about academic publishing, it's incredibly broken. The centralized publishers have essentially figured out how to keep research that they didn't do behind a paywall and get free labor to decide what gets published. So like if you're a professor, you submit a journal article in some sense, and sometimes you actually pay to submit. And then there's reviewers who review it. They're not paid either. And then the main kind of character behind the scenes here is Elevisor. Now, Elevisor, I saw this in a talk yesterday. Their profit margins are in the hundreds of millions of dollars, about 37% profit margin. And all they do is rely on free labor to publish a journal that then they don't even allow people to access. So, pretty much all the DeSci DAOs are focused on fixing that, and we're one of them. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's kind of 3 things we do really well and that we're focused on. The first one is obviously research, and I want to highlight a couple of our studies. I'm going to leave the last couple there alone to give Lisa some time to kind of double click on them. But we have sort of 4 studies right now. One's on diversity, another one's on compensation, another one's on network health, which is kind of a concept that I've been creating where I think of DAOs as social systems and it's communication networks. So how can we use social network analysis to assess the health and viability of a DAO? And we're writing a grant right now for that. And then we're doing some super cool stuff with decentralized leadership, and that's all I'm going to say about that. We also do consulting for DAOs to the extent that we want to partner with DAOs who really care about science and want to essentially pioneer the science of DAOs and help improve human coordination. So a couple sort of informal partnerships we're doing some work with. We're working with DAO. Both the diversity study and the compensation study, the primary work sample is DAO people. We're also partnering with Aragon. I'm very excited to do some case studies for them and to help kind of come up with a decentralization playbook. And then we're also doing some work with some Web 2 organizations, going back to kind of our first pillar of unlocking talent. If you're a traditional organization and you want to learn about DAOs, you want to figure out how we can be more decentralized or how we can use DeFi to empower our employees through new reward systems, we do some workshops, and that's mainly something I've been doing personally, but I would love to productize it and have it be something that we offer at TalentDAO. And then the last one is all about education, right? And I kind of believe that if you're in Web3 or if you're a DAO, education should be one of your main pillars, regardless of your business model, because we're in such a new space. There are so many people who have no idea what we're trying to do. And I think if you don't have some sort of education arm, you're going to have a really hard time converting people. So, we do that through the newsletter of decentralized work. We actually just launched that on Substack. And our first edition came out last week. Definitely worth checking out. We kind of highlight a few articles that the community has been doing. Specifically, the purpose of that newsletter is a bit different. It's less editorial, and we're more doing quick data-driven summaries of stuff we're finding out there, because we want anyone interested in DAOs or decentralized work to quickly just read through our journal, kind of get the key points, and then move on with their day, because as many of you probably are very oversubscribed to newsletters. I know I am. So the second one that we're working on is the Journal of Decentralized Work, and that is fully on-chain, published as sort of IP NFTs. And then, we're storing everything using Arweave, and we'll have a governance token actually that decides what gets published. So we're taking kind of a community-reviewed approach to peer-reviewed research, and we're doing that using a delegated proof-of-stake model, where you can actually stake your governance with people qualified to review. And then, we're trying to get our Twitter game stronger. Definitely follow us on Twitter. And, we're definitely always kind of posting interesting articles and interesting tidbits about our study. Next slide. Okay.
So I'm super thrilled to share with you, as somebody who has a deep passion for DAO education and DAO research, a couple of the studies that we've worked on and some insights. So if you are a part of a DAO, if you are looking for insights that might help you advance and accelerate your growth in an intelligent, data-based way, then TalentDAO is a great person to be following, to be connected into. And here's one of the studies that we're finding a lot of value in already from people I've talked to today, and that's our compensation study that we just wrapped up. At the Nemo, who's one of our founders, is actually the primary researcher on this study. And essentially what happened was we surveyed 166 individuals, primarily at Bankless DAO, and gave them 4 different compensation scenarios. Go ahead and flip to the next slide, and we'll show you a little bit about what that looked like. And I won't belabor it, just for time's sake. Know that we will be publishing a lot more on the results of this study. However, there's some key insights that I wanted to share with you today. And one of those is that we already found out through our research that you want to have different considerations as your DAO matures. So you might have put effort into determining a compensation strategy at the onset. As your group balloons, potentially, you want to make sure you keep a close pulse on that. The other thing is there might be things that work for certain subsets of your DAO that do not work or are not the preferences of others. So one of our key bottom line findings from this is that you're going to need to conduct pulse surveys and of different subsets in your group. And this is exactly the type of work that TalentDAO would love to partner with you on and help you with. But what we do understand is that there are differences. For example, as your DAO gets bigger, bounty boards might be less preferred by your population, by your community. So these are just some of the insights that give you a taste for what TalentDAO is up to. If you flip to the next slide, this is the bottom line. We don't want you to make wrong assumptions or comparisons or miss important drivers of what matters to you and your outcomes in your DAO. So in particular with compensation, the bottom line is to survey over time and by important group. The next study that I want to highlight, I'm super excited about. So this one I'm the primary researcher on with a phenomenal data scientist, Mr. Nobody is actually his name. And so Mr. Nobody has done a phenomenal job at conducting an initial rapid review of the literature on shared leadership. And that's really looking at this, if you want to advance to this idea of decentralized leadership. The graph that you see here is from a Mirror article that I posted on January 13th looking at what is a DAO. This gets us deep into the idea of conducting more extensive literature reviews. So you might be familiar with this idea of DAO versus companies. I know Aragon has a really common one that people see that has 5 different ones. That was factored into this, as well as Bankless's work, Koopa Troopa, whether it's an influencer in our field or a highly credible DAO educator. What we did was we looked at the literature that exists today and updated it for January of 2022 is when this was published and what informed and influenced this. So we know the world of work is changing. And what that does is essentially sets the bedrock for the fact that we need to develop leaders differently in this different world of work. And so that's really what we're going to spend 2022 on, and what my body of work is to advance this year is focused on the idea that when humans organize, we are not leaderless. We will never be leaderless. Leadership naturally emerges when humans organize. But the intent there is the idea that leadership needs to look differently, that we don't need to have gatekeepers of certain privileges or certain information in the DAO ecosystem. And that's what's so exciting, is to look at how does leadership change in this decentralized world of work. And we believe initially that shared leadership and the work that's been done in that space academically can give us some really good insights. And so I've highlighted a couple of them here for you. One of them is that shared leadership emerges in conditions where teammates know where to go and know what's expected of them. This is that shared purpose and clarity of role. They also lend a hand to each other, meaning there's that feeling of social support. So if you don't already have that in your DAO, think of different ways that you can cultivate that. And then they also need to be able to, and this is inherently in DAOs, influence the direction of the actual group itself. So the ability to voice, be heard, and be seen, and show up and have an impact. And so these are the conditions that we know cultivate shared leadership within an organization. And this is something that we believe DAOs inherently have in our structure, but we need to make sure that we're capitalizing on it and giving an outlet for that. The other thing is we know that shared leadership does relate to performance, and this is through, again, an exhaustive review that Mr. Nobody did on various meta-analyses and systematic reviews. And we know that when we do have shared leadership, we see more positive outcomes. And also, when we introduce greater hierarchy, it does increase conflict and does get in the way of human coordination. So we just need to be mindful of where do we intentionally centralize. Because I saw a tweet the other day of, give me an example of one DAO that's 100% decentralized. And it's very difficult to actually find and name one. And I don't even know that that's the point that we need to focus on at this time. What it is about how do we make intentional choices to move forward in a way that suspends our judgment so we don't just copy-paste the structures of the past onto this beautiful, potential-filled Web3 space. And so those are some of the big highlights from where we're already headed. That was just an initial rapid review. We're doing a much more extensive literature review coming up on this idea of decentralized leadership, specifically looking at leadership in DAOs, and then conducting primary research and interviews in the DAO ecosystem on the topic of leadership. So if this interests you, please connect with me, DM, follow, and please get connected with TalentDAO. We do know that when it comes to DAOs, it is a different world. Each person needs to step up into their own sense of leadership. I say it's about mojo. You're not going to get very far with a lot of ego in this community. You do need to show up, be ambitious, initiative, and up with some mojo. So that's what I'd love to share with you today. We are so excited about these insights, about being connected to all of you, and we're eager to have partners, contributors, and just people who are energized by what we're about. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you very much, TalentDAO.